Finally, some good news for the Phoenix Suns. Cameron Johnson returning to the lineup on Thursday against the Brooklyn Nets. That plus much more trade news and drama behind the scenes. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On. You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thank you all for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Thursday, another Suns game day, another nationally televised game, and finally some good news. So we have a lot to get to today, a very busy show. Hit follow, hit subscribe wherever you're finding us, Apple, Spotify, and if you are on YouTube, go ahead and hit that bell down below, get a notification when the show goes live, and drop a comment. Drop a happy comment, because today is a happy day. Finally, despite what may or may not be a Suns win, the light at the end of the tunnel is finally here with these injuries. You can also follow at Locked On PHX Suns on Twitter to get caught up with everything going on around the Suns and keep up with the team. All right, Aaron, the Suns announced today, Cam Johnson back on Thursday. I kind of felt like that's where we were headed. I literally thought, okay, the Wednesday show is going to be the show where we talk about Cam coming back. The Suns went ahead and did it easier because they just told us that we don't have to wait until tip-off. We know it is happening. So it's about 9.5 weeks from when he tore. That's reasonable. He didn't get the surgery right away, and he's going to be on a minutes limit. That's kind of all we know right now. What are your expectations for Cam Johnson coming back, and how excited are you to finally have somebody returning to the lineup rather than leaving the lineup?
I think it's cool. I think he's going to get on the floor for the first time and be like, who the hell are these guys? And I think that's probably going to be the jarring part for him for the most part. Like, he's only ever really played with the people he's played with, and it's a bunch of randos on the floor right now. So I think that's probably going to take some getting used to. And I just want him, like, this is your time to get your legs back under you, get shots up. Like, it can't hurt. It really can't hurt this team any more than it already is looking. So I just want him to get his legs under him, get comfortable, and get shots up. Like, you can treat these as practice because these games aren't really looking great at the moment. So if anything, like, just to show off your stock and try to raise that back up again and get as many shots up as you can.
I think that's a reasonable expectation. I don't think we should feel like, and I don't think any Suns fans do, like this guy's going to solve all the problems by any means. He's a finisher, right? Like, he's still a guy who's going to knock down shots that other players set him up for. Maybe they'll put the ball in his hands, because why not at this point? Chris Paul's questionable for this game, so he might actually return as well. I think it'll happen this weekend at some point if it doesn't happen tomorrow. And that's actually pretty important to me too, because Payne is still out. And I want Cam to be put into a position to succeed. I don't feel great if Dwayne Washington or Damian Lee are the guys that are passing it to him coming off of screens. Personally, I don't really love the Landry Shamet at point guard experiment we've had to watch. But we'll keep talking about Cam. I have a question for you actually first, because you said Cam might not recognize these guys. And I haven't been dragging you onto the show as often. We've had some scheduling difficulties. Do you know who these guys are? How many Suns games have you been watching the past month? Bring us into Aaron's world, because we haven't heard your voice on this feed as often, and I'm a little. I feel like is it more or less than half of the games in the month of January that you've watched?
I've watched half of every game. That's actually like full on honesty. If like maybe not like a whole one. I watched the game against the Warriors that they won, obviously. But like, it's just been more of the same. Like, I wasn't going to put myself through any of that. So I'd watch the first half when they would look fairly decent and then just get their doors blown off by like the third. So I'd be out by then. But yeah, I've already done that.
It's a mental health decision at the end of the day, I think, more than anything. And I can't fault anybody for that. I want to talk a little bit about the schedule and the health situation overall. I mentioned Chris Paul is he's questionable for Thursday. I would expect him to be back. They have a 5-game homestand, and that is Brooklyn, obviously, the game we're talking about. Indiana on Saturday. Remember, no Halliburton. Grizzlies on Sunday, which rest in peace to the Suns. That will be a loss. Charlotte on Tuesday, and then Dallas next Thursday and another 8 o'clock game. Rest in peace to me having to go to all these 8 o'clock games. Then you have at San Antonio versus the Raptors and versus the Hawks, and that gets you through January, which at that point, I would imagine everybody will be back. If Chris Paul and Cam Johnson can come back by Saturday, I think that they could beat the Pacers and the Hornets. I would feel pretty good about. And I think if they're both back for Brooklyn and Dallas, those are at least toss-ups because Kevin Durant is out. The Mavs are inconsistent. So I don't know. Is that too bullish? Am I jumping the gun and just assuming that they're going to get right back to where they were and start winning games again because a couple guys came back? Still no book. And that might make me sound crazy. Yeah,
I mean, especially for a team that couldn't hit like 95 for like 3 games in a row. So I think I think it's kind of
even with Chris Paul in there.
Yeah,
for some of those. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's still asking a lot. Like, we're really finding out how much of the scoring is because of Book, because it wasn't like they're like missing open, like they can't dribble, like they're turning the ball over so much. And they just can't even crack 95 sometimes. Like, you can't even think of 100 at this point. So I think just a road trip like that against some decent teams, even one without Kevin Durant, I think it's still asking a lot, especially when every bucket seems like a grind. Like, every single one, it seems like a tough one.
That's fair. I will just say, I think the more time that Chris Paul takes with these injuries, I have to admit that it kind of makes me more optimistic in a way. And this might sound, again, like I'm drinking Kool-Aid here, but I feel like the past version of Chris Paul, I mean, we talked so much when he first got here about the way there was that like infamous thing of Sam Presti put a presentation in front of him saying, we're going to load manage you. And Chris Paul turned off the laptop and whatever he did, set off a grenade in the room and said, no, I'm not doing any of that. And so seeing him actually rest makes me optimistic that they are prioritizing him being fresh. I don't know what that looks like. Well, for now, really, for right now, to actually be able to help the team win games, because I guess to get to my point, the dude with shooters, I still think can be at a level that they can beat middling teams at home with rest, that type of thing. And so when you look at Indiana, when you look at Charlotte, like, you put a lineup with Damian Lee, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and DeAndre Ayton out there to close games, and Chris Paul's just running pick and roll. Like, at a certain point, it has to just be muscle memory, right? And I'm not saying I told you Memphis is a loss. Like, I'm not sitting here saying the season is saved, but I think they can start to look a little more like themselves, and everybody's job will get a little easier.
Yeah, I'd rather them look like an average team, if that's what you're saying, like to look like a decently average team. Yeah, I mean, we've fallen far, but yes, we're asking them to look average. And I think with Chris Paul and a consistent shooter, then yeah, I think we could finally feel a little bit comfortable in at least a point guard's hand, which is, hey, I'll take it. I'll take my crumbs if I can get them.
We can move beyond the great debate of Dwayne Washington versus Saban Lee of January 16th and put that in the rearview mirror, the DNP. And yeah, I literally did a segment yesterday about why Dwayne Washington got a DNP and why Saban Lee played over him. So I am just as thrilled as everyone else to no longer have to talk about any of these ridiculous concerns. We also got some news today. In addition to the Suns announcing Cam Johnson will be back, Brian Windhorst just had an amazing radio hit where he's dropping little pellets of news, just doing what Windy does on Bickley and Murata here locally. I'll tell you why we kind of know who Brian Windhorst is getting his information from first and foremost, and we'll react to what he actually said in just a second. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, you don't want all the fat and calories, you've got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. A lot of us here in January trying to eat a little healthier. Maybe it's a resolution. Maybe it's just something you have in the back of your mind. Either way, you've got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. What makes these guys so good is, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, each and every bar. And they come in unbelievably delicious flavors like churro. You got peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, tons and tons, some fruit type flavors as well. Whatever you love, there's going to be something there. Whatever candy bar you love, there's going to be a matching Built Bar for you. And the best part is they keep them tasting like candy bars while maintaining amazing macros. So you're never really going to crack 150 calories, never really going to crack 5 grams of sugar. And each and every bar is going to have 15 to 20 grams of protein in there as well for you. We've been telling you about Built.com for years. That promo code still works. That is locked on 15 for 15% off. But if the web isn't for you, if you don't want to deal with shipping and waiting and all that, you can head down to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. In the Valley, we have, I think, thousands of both, if I'm not mistaken. So check those out as well. Boxes upon boxes, 4-bar boxes, deluxe 13-bar boxes at Sam's Club and more. Or, of course, at Built.com. A tour de force from Brian Windhorst, in my opinion, on 98.7 locally. I listened to it. Once I started to see the quotes come out, Aaron, I knew I had to check it out for myself. I couldn't see if he was pointing like he did on First Take, but I'm assuming he was. Let's just start with the juiciest stuff here. So right off the bat, I think it was Vince Murata said, like, we know the Suns need a Jae Crowder trade. He brought up, like, there's rumors Crowder might just get bought out. How much should Suns fans be buying into this, et cetera, et cetera. And, like, almost as if he was scoffing at it, Windy was like, Crowder's getting traded. And then he went on to say, James and his team have fully vetted the market. They've been doing it for months now. And to just jump right to my main takeaway from listening to this, at long last, we've had all these years where James Jones talks to nobody. There's no Suns leaks. And then about a year ago, all of a sudden, on ESPN.com, there's reports coming out about the Suns from Brian Windhorst. And you're like, all right, like, he's been around for playoff games. Like anyone who covers this team like I do, we've seen him around. Okay, he was at media day. Like there's some noise there. And then he starts saying stuff like that. We know that he covered the Cavs when Jones was around. James Jones is talking to Brian Windhorst. The mystery is solved. Not that it might have ever been one, but I think it's less so that Windhorst, we know who he's been talking to, and more so that we have a guy now that I guess Jones is comfortable talking to. So it's really a win for Suns fans who want to know information about this team, because it seems like we can get it from this guy going forward.
Yeah, having a guy that kind of linked into to just the NBA in general. Like, it wasn't just one of our local people that James Jones is talking to. Like, he's talking to like a real legit person. But at some point, James has to feel the heat. Like, he has to get the word out somehow, because first of all, like, the fans have probably been more vocal against him than ever right now. So I think it's just kind of one of those just fanning the just throwing water on like the flames and just trying to help himself out at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure he's feeling it. I'm sure he's hearing it. Like, you always hear and you feel this stuff. This is just the first for him. Like, this is the first time like everybody is trying to put heads on spikes right now.
And I wanted to, part of the reason I wanted to bring this up is because mostly on Twitter, not so much on the show, but I've been kind of criticizing Jones a little bit for being so coy about all this. And I know it's his way of doing things. Like, who am I to tell him to do it differently? But it felt like it was getting to a point for me where we're going to talk about Crowder's interview with Chris Haynes, which is a little outdated at this point, but I haven't talked about it in depth. I was kind of waiting for you. It was getting to the point where Crowder was kind of owning the chatter right? And like there was all this crazy stuff going around, some of it from Windhorst, which I'll get to in a second, about the ownership situation. Is it stopping them from making trades? You're hearing stuff like Jae Crowder is going to get bought out, which to me felt crazy, but we were at the point where who the hell knew anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so I was kind of coming at Jones like, you got to say something. You do this interview every Wednesday with Burns and Gambo already. You could do a press conference any day of the week you want. You can call up any NBA reporter. Like, there's ways to get your message out there. Why are you making it so that Suns fans are just freaked out that this whole thing is coming crumbling down, and you could just answer some questions? And so now that we know that probably just about everything Windhorst has reported for about a month about this team probably was coming from James Jones, I guess we can take it as he has been talking, just not directly. He was using a middleman, but we've been getting his message, and his message is, I can't do anything because of this damn ownership situation. And I think he still needs to get stuff done. Suns fans won't be happy unless he does, but we at least know his side of it, and I think it's understandable.
Yeah, I think like at the same time, like I understand James Jones's rough position. Like no GM in the NBA is just going to come out and be like, sorry guys, like I can't do anything right now. Like there's no right way to do that other than speaking through reporters.
Couldn't he just say we have some like it's a little tricky right now, or yes, we have to get approval from Sarver. Like they're lying to us about the fact that Sarver even has to approve this stuff, whereas Windhorst is telling us, yes, he has to say yes to all of it. Whereas then Jones is like, no, I have full authority. It's like, you're just lying. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I think that when you hear too much from a GM, you like become a meme. Like, remember all the trades that Danny Ainge always said almost happened? Like, you end up becoming that guy. You're the almost dude, or I think James Jones likes things to be done when they're done and not do the Ainge thing. Was like, we almost had Anthony Davis. We almost had Jimmy Butler. Like, we almost had, like, I don't think he wants to be that person that almost had stuff happen. So he wants to wait. But at the same time, we are getting our ass whooped, and the fans do want this trade out because we're down a starter that doesn't want to be on the team anymore. So I think he's stuck in a weird position on both sides for that.
Is it Jerry Jones syndrome? Is that what we should call that? When you when you're heard from too much and fans actually hate hearing from you at a certain point?
Yeah.
It's the guys who don't. I feel like some maybe it's mostly coaches, but in like those big media markets, some of these guys have their own shows. Like they do a show with a host every week. And I feel like Ainge was one of those. And Jerry has his, it feels like 5 different times he talks every week.
Yeah, I feel like he's on the radio a lot.
Yeah. So yes, you want to avoid Jerry Jones syndrome. You want to avoid feeling like you're making excuses, which I feel like is kind of what you were getting at, that if you're heard from too much, you're made fun of, and you don't want to be the guy who's making excuses while your team is dropping, 30-point blowouts every night. So I get that. But again, Suns fans who are listening, if Windhorst reports it and it feels like it's coming from a Suns standpoint, you might as well just have James Jones on the byline. Not that I don't think Windy does his homework and tries to confirm it with other people. I'm not making accusations, but we know how this stuff works. The other thing he said, though, on the radio was about Matt Ishbia, who it seems like he might have some context there as well. He mentioned that the Ishbia transition has kind of already begun. Sarver has allowed Ishbia to start meeting with Suns people. All good signs that the sale is basically coming to a completion soon. We know Ishbia wants to get it done before the deadline so that he can have full authority over moves by then. We don't know if that will happen, but he said, Windhorst said he wouldn't be surprised to see Matt Ishbia at a game soon. Like, it's getting to that point. And he mentioned something a little bit tricky, which I don't know what to make of. I don't know if you do, Aaron, that he's impressed. Windhorst is impressed with the people that Ishbia has started to hire to help with the sale. Mike Vigil of the Timeline podcast tweeted something, and then he said Windhorst reached out to confirm that it's not like business ops people that he's going to install as with the team, but it's people that he's working with to complete the sale. I don't know how all this works. It's rich people stuff. I didn't know Windhorst and Mike Vigil chatted like that. I have no idea what's going on, but I guess the end all be all is good news, good signs, optimism, good stuff. I don't know what else to make of it.
Yeah, I know you're dealing with a lot of money, but I just don't know why this is so hard. Like, just hand over the title to the car. It's my car now. I'll give you your $3 billion or whatever, and it's my team.
Notary
now.
If you need one.
Yeah. Like, this shouldn't take months. I know how much money it involves, but still, it's ridiculous to me.
The financiers who are on the hook for a few of the billions, maybe they are part of why this is complicated more than we thought. It is just weird when you heard right away from Woj when this purchase went down, like everything's going to go so fast because they all know who he is. Don't worry. It's all going to be done fast. And then it's like months later, we still don't know. I think, again, what I'm going to take away from Windhorst's report here is I don't know what types of transitionary dudes would impress Windhorst, but I'll take him at his word. And he used this phrase, calming times are coming for the Suns. And I'll leave it at that. I think that's a great note of optimism. We'll close the show with a little bit of a rewind back to the interview Jae Crowder gave to Chris Haynes. I think actually that a little bit more clarity with this Windhorst thing and the James Jones side of it all can help us kind of sift through this. But I want to focus more than anything on Monty Williams and his role here. Mikal Bridges also went on the radio today and did an interview that I want to kind of throw into the mix and sift through who's on what side and what those sides even are. First, today's show, guys, brought to you as well by BetOnline, your number one source for sports betting info, news, and analysis, even podcasts all year long. Stay up to date, get the info you need to make bets, all of it from pro and to amateur leagues across literally the world. The Australian Open going on. In tennis, obviously the pro football playoffs, the NBA regular season, all in full swing. They have baseball odds up already. Division winners. So if you're getting in the mood for some spring training baseball, maybe you head over there. Whatever you love to bet on, BetOnline has the info for you. The fastest and easiest way to get it, head to the website today. That's betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. So I'm sure a lot of fans have heard this interview, seen the quotes, whatever it might be, Aaron, from Jae Crowder to Chris Haynes. I'll read the one that jumped out to me that I think we should kind of talk about first and foremost today. Crowder said, quote, "I am thankful my teammates appreciated my leadership. I'm confused and hurt my coaches didn't appreciate the things I brought to our team and organization, and this has nothing to do with financial or contract differences." I don't really know, because in the past he has said it had nothing to do with his role. Here he's saying it had nothing to do with his contract. And he's setting the target squarely on the coaching staff, which to me means Monty Williams. What do you think is going on here first, before I dive too far in? Do you think he's just BSing all of us and talking out of his you-know-what? Or do you feel like we can actually follow his words and find some sort of truth?
I think he's trying to be a good teammate at the same time, and it's still one of those things. I think it is a playing time thing. I think it was Big Bench, but I think him and Cam Johnson are friends. So I don't think he wants the blame or anything to shift toward Cam Johnson. That's why I think he's being so vague and open-ended about all of this, because he doesn't want to also trash one of his teammates who I'm sure he likes at the same time over probably something that involves him.
I think you're probably right. I buy more that it would be over role and starting than I do contract. It never really made sense to me, unless Crowder just has a terrible agent or was getting some really bad advice, why he would expect a big extension like that. It's just not how the NBA works. Like, people point to PJ Tucker. It's like he had to bounce around multiple teams before he found one that was willing to give him the contract that everybody is saying Crowder's chasing now. It's not like PJ Tucker's been lucratively, supported his whole career. Danny Green is on an ACL tear. Like, we think he's getting that deal. Like, these aging 3-and-D guys, it's not like they're just walking in money. I that never made sense. I know he had that contract early in his career where it was like 5 years, $20 million. He got really screwed there. I could see why money would matter, but I never thought it made sense to matter that much. The part that tripped me up about the Chris Haynes article was he quoted Mikal Bridges in there, and Mikal was pretty supportive in a way that I wasn't expecting. Now, Mikal then went on the radio today with Burns and Gambo and gave an interview, was asked about this, and said he referenced how those two guys, he wasn't asked about Monty. He said those two guys have their own sides of the story, and he kind of sees both sides. He didn't say Monty, but I don't know who the heck else he would have been talking about. So I'm going to assume it was Jay and Monty that he was referencing. And so I want to toe a line here, but I think people know where I'm coming from. How many times is Monty going to be able to slide before we even think and talk about his role in all of this? We have Chris Paul, who Sam Amick reported, Dan Bickley reported after that Game 7 that those two did not see eye to eye. We have DeAndre Ayton, who blew up in that Game 7, and we know that those guys had problems. And then now it feels like there was probably some kind of miscommunication or problem going on between Monty and Jay that turned it from something that might have been workable to all of a sudden the day of media day, James Jones is sending out an email to everybody saying, yeah, that guy's not going to be around all year. That's still, I'm not ever going to get past how quickly those things escalated. And when Mikal, who's a bystander, knows that it had to do with something between Monty and Jay, I'm going to go ahead and defer to that. And is it fair to point the finger at Monty, who's this guy who turned around the culture and has always the right things to say? Because we're in, 3 times in a calendar year now where this guy's been in the crosshairs of something that pissed somebody off pretty bad on his team.
Yeah. It does seem like one common denominator, but all these random dudes that they can have a problem with Monty until Book says something, nothing's going to happen. So until Devin or Monty Booker says he has a problem with the coach, then that'll probably get a ball moving. But we still don't have an owner yet. So I think the people that have to make those decisions are probably going to come to Book first. But I think yes, Monty's the common denominator. But until our star player, who doesn't seem like he's ever had any beef with Monty, I think that's when things might change. But right now, it's just Monty having problems with some dudes, and it's not Devin Booker.
It's, first of all, hilarious that you're calling Chris Paul a dude.
Well, Chris Paul has problems literally everywhere he goes except OKC, but he knew he was leaving already. He rubs people the wrong way. He's probably the common denominator out of that one because he rubs people the wrong way literally everywhere he goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all that's fair. I think it's fair to say, even Jae Crowder, I'm not trying to paint him as an innocent person. Even if there was some sort of blow up that happened and maybe it was a meeting that they set up and then Monty was going to tell him, hey, you're not going to start anymore. I'm not going to pretend like I think Jay just, crossed his hands and spoke at an even, volume the whole time. I don't know. There's probably fault on all sides. And I'm sure as heck not going to try to say that Ayton is the easiest guy to coach either. That's not what I'm doing. I'm also not, coming after Monty's job. And so I agree with you. Until Booker has a problem, we're not going to be having a conversation about the status of this guy. Maybe if James Jones were to get fired, then you're talking about somebody else replacing. We're a long way from all of that. I agree. But I do feel like Booker's not the only player on a team, right?
Yeah.
You got to have everybody on the same page. We've seen firsthand, despite how good you might feel heading into the playoffs, it can end real fast. It can end real ugly if things don't go perfectly. And that's kind of what a coach's job is, especially with how talented all these players are now and how much freedom they all have on the court and off the court and whatever. It's kind of a person business. That's also supposed to be Monty's strength as a coach. I'm not saying that I am second guessing that that's his strength now, but I'm at least not going to blindly assume that he is handling all of this correctly. Whereas the first couple of years, if anything like this had come up, I would have been like, it's great. It's Jay's fault. He messed up. Yeah. It's him, whatever. And now I guess I'll just say since Game 7, I think my mind has turned a little bit to where I'm at least going to be skeptical that Monty's pushing all the right buttons here in a way that I wasn't before.
Yeah, coaching kind of, I think his style probably wouldn't wear as much as others' coaching styles. But I think even like Steve Kerr and Phil Jackson, like all those dudes say, after a couple of years, like you all kind of wear on each other a different way. Like we didn't win a championship, obviously, but just all that time together. Carlisle couldn't stand Luka. Like just sometimes all this stuff just kind of wears on people, and the message kind of doesn't get across the way that it used to those first couple of years. So I think we're kind of just at that point.
Coaching is such a thankless job. Like, and like you said, you're just gone the minute that the person higher up than you on the totem pole, which is either the GM or the star player, has a problem, it's over. And it is crazy. I know I'm the one criticizing him here, and then in the next breath I'm saying it's thankless. But I'm also saying I was pretty concrete about he is going to be right in most situations. He knows what's what, and these young players don't. And maybe we're just part of it too. Like, to your point, it is the years together, but it's also these guys aren't 22 anymore. And yeah, I think that's part of it too. Chris Paul, different sort of thing, but the rest of these guys, I think there's an element too, where it's like, I don't just listen to whatever you say anymore. I have my own thoughts and opinions. It's like a little kid growing up, right? They start to talk back. Like, I think that could be part of what we're seeing too.
Yeah, I think that dudes are getting paid. Dudes want to get paid. Dudes' careers are almost over. Like, I think it's a lot of stuff happening at the same time that, yeah, emotions are going to fly. They got blown out by 40 in the playoffs. Like, I think, and they're having a rough season now. I think all of those things kind of come in together, and Monty is supposed to be the glue that kind of keeps us up together, but it's a lot of moving parts right now.
Yeah, not to beat the same drum over and over, but I do think it all just kind of leads back to they got to make a trade. Like, this is just another reason why.
And that's another part of it. Like, Jae Crowder probably ain't leaving by himself. Like, I think that's probably a feeling around there too. Like, it's like Jay's leaving and somebody else. So I think it's just the fact that they know one of them is on the chopping block too.
Seems like a not fun place to work right now. Luckily, they're going to be home. They're getting players back, as we started out by talking about. So some good news, some positivity in that building, at least for a little while. I do think they'll start to win more than 25% of their games, which is what they've been doing since December 1st. I think we could see a 2-3 road homestand, 3-2 homestand. And then they're playing 7 out of their next 8 at home. So that'll be a really good opportunity to get healthy, start winning, evaluate yourself before the deadline, and make some of these changes we know are coming. That'll do it for today's show, though, guys. Recap episode coming after the Nets game on Thursday night, late. So hit subscribe, hit follow, get that show in your feed. If you're staying up, if you want to listen on Friday, whatever it might be, I will be here for you. That'll round us out for the week. In the meantime, go make Locked On NBA your second listen to get caught up on everything else going on around the league, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.